We've agreed. You're no longer part of the family. The text from my mother popped up on my screen without a single warning. I stared at it, waiting for the 3 dots that meant she was typing a correction. But they never came. Instead, seconds later, a new notification appeared. Victoria liked the message. My sister actually hearted my disownment. There was no explanation. Just erasure. I looked up at the empty hospital break room and realized the truth. I was an orphan with living parents. I swallowed the lump in my throat and opened my laptop. My hands were steady. In the ER, when a patient crashes, you don't panic. You don't ask why they're bleeding out. You just stop the bleeding. I logged into the family cloud account. The one that held every photo, every contact, every digital memory they had. The one I'd been paying for since I was 22, because Jackson said he didn't trust the internet with his credit card. First, I went to the security settings. I deleted Jackson's recovery email and replaced it with a burner address I'd created years ago for junk mail. Then, I changed the password. It was a small, silent click, but it felt like slamming a heavy door. Just like that, they were locked out of their own digital history. Next came the insurance portal. I pulled up the supplemental health policy that covered Jackson's prescriptions and Shelley's necessary dermatology visits. The premium was $300 a month, automatically deducted from my checking account. I didn't just cancel it. That would trigger an email notification. Instead, I went to the payment methods. I deleted my card and left the field blank. Then, I checked the box for paperless billing. The confirmation screen flashed green. Changes saved. They wouldn't know. They wouldn't get a letter in the mail. They wouldn't get an email warning. They would find out in 6 weeks when Jackson went to pick up his blood pressure medication and the pharmacist told him his coverage had been terminated for non-payment. It was a ticking time bomb, buried under layers of administrative silence. I sat back, the plastic chair digging into my spine. I should have felt guilty. That's what they trained me to feel. For years, I was the safety net they walked all over. The one who made sure the bills were paid and the lights stayed on while they played at being wealthy. But looking at that screen, at the empty payment field, I didn't feel guilt. I felt lighter. In the ER, you don't fight a hemorrhage with tears. You apply a tourniquet and wait for the limb to go numb. I closed the laptop and picked up my phone. I didn't send a goodbye text. I didn't try to defend myself. I just went to my contacts, found Mom, Dad, and Victoria, and hit block caller. The break room door opened. Dr. Evans stuck his head in. "Hannah, we've got a multi-car pileup coming in. 5 minutes out." I stood up, smoothed my scrubs, and clipped my badge back onto my chest. "I'm ready," I said. And for the first time in my life, I actually was. The next morning, I didn't wake up to an apology. I woke up to a war. My phone was filled with notifications. 11 missed calls from Shelley, 8 voicemails from Jackson, and 1 text from Victoria that simply said, "You're ruining everything." I sat on the edge of my bed and listened to the first voicemail. "You ungrateful brat." Jackson's voice snarled through the speaker. "You think you can just cut us off? After everything we've done for you? Fix this immediately or I'm calling a lawyer. Do you hear me? I will ruin you." I deleted it. They talked about everything they'd done for me like it was a long list of sacrifices. But I had my own list. A ledger of invisible labor that I'd carried in my head for years. 3 years ago, Jackson had called me in a panic. He was short on cash. The bank was threatening foreclosure on Oak Hill, the family estate that had been in the family for 3 generations. He begged me for help. He promised it was a one-time thing. I emptied my savings. I picked up 6 months of overtime shifts, working double weekends until my feet bled and my eyes burned. I wired them $42,000 to save the house. Did they thank me? No. Shelley told the neighbors that Jackson had made some brilliant investments to cover the rough patch. I was erased from the story before the check even cleared. Then there was Victoria. When she decided she wanted to be an influencer, she needed a camera, lighting equipment, and a professional website. Who paid for it? Me. $18,000 over 2 years, disguised as loans that were never repaid. But the worst entry in the ledger wasn't financial. It was the lie they forced me to live. When I was 18, they sat me down at the kitchen table. Jackson looked at me with cold, hard eyes and said, "You're not college material, Hannah. You're just average. We don't want you embarrassing us by failing out." They told me to leave. But they didn't just kick me out. They handed me a script. "Tell the neighbors you're taking a gap year to find yourself," Shelley had said, smoothing her skirt. "Tell them you want to travel. Don't tell them we asked you to go. We have a reputation to maintain." So I did. I lied for them. I protected their image while I slept on a friend's couch and worked 2 jobs to put myself through nursing school. I let them paint me as the flighty, ungrateful daughter who abandoned her loving family while they played the victims. I walked into my kitchen and poured a cup of coffee. The steam rose in the quiet apartment. For 10 years, I had been their safety net, their bank, and their PR manager. I wasn't just a daughter. I was their biggest creditor, and now, the debt was due. I sat at my kitchen counter, staring at the cold coffee in my mug. The sun was up, but the world felt different. Sharper. My phone rang. It was Shelley. "Where are you?" Her voice was shrill. So loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. "I can't get into the cloud. All my photos are gone. Did you do something?" I didn't answer. I just listened to her panic. It wasn't the panic of a mother worried about her child. It was the panic of someone realizing the locks had been changed. "And the insurance," she continued, her voice rising an octave. "I tried to call the pharmacy about your father's prescription, and they said the policy is inactive. Hannah, fix this right now." I hung up. 5 minutes later, a notification popped up. A voicemail from Jackson. I played it on speaker. His voice was low, controlled. The kind of voice he used when he wanted to remind me who was in charge. "Hannah," he said, "I don't know what game you're playing, but you need to stop. If those accounts aren't restored by noon, I'm filing a report with the nursing board. I'll tell them you're stealing narcotics. I'll tell them you're unstable. You'll lose your license. You'll lose everything." The message ended with a click. I sat there, the silence ringing in my ears. He wasn't just threatening me. He was threatening my livelihood, my career, the one thing I had built entirely on my own. In the ER, we call this escalation. When a patient goes from yelling to throwing punches, you stop negotiating. You call security. But I didn't call security. I called my lawyer. Or rather, Grandfather Arthur's lawyer. Mr. Sterling answered on the second ring. "Hannah," he said, his voice grave. "I was just about to call you. Your grandfather passed away early this morning." I closed my eyes. Grief washed over me, heavy and suffocating. Arthur was the only one who had ever seen me. The only one who had ever treated me like I mattered. And now he was gone. "The funeral will be private," Mr. Sterling continued, per his instructions. "But the will reading is scheduled for tomorrow at 10 a.m. at Oak Hill. Your parents and sister have been notified." "I'll be there," I said. "Hannah," he added, his tone softening. "Be prepared." I spent the rest of the day preparing. Not for the grief, but for the performance. I stood in front of my bathroom mirror. I relaxed my shoulders, letting them slump forward. I practiced looking down, avoiding eye contact. I made my hands tremble slightly. I went to my closet and pulled out an old, gray sweater. It was 2 sizes too big, the sleeves fraying at the cuffs. I pulled it on. In the mirror, I didn't look like a competent ER nurse. I looked like a frightened child. "In the ER, I whispered to my reflection, "you don't fight a drunk patient. You let them swing until they tire themselves out." Jackson and Shelley wanted a victim. They wanted the weak, indecisive daughter they could bully into submission. Fine. I'd give them an Oscar-winning performance. The library at Oak Hill smelled of leather polish and old money. It was a room designed to make you feel small. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, heavy velvet drapes, and a mahogany desk that looked like it belonged to a head of state. I sat in the corner, sinking into an oversized armchair, pulling the sleeves of my gray sweater down over my hands. Jackson and Shelley sat opposite the desk, their posture rigid. They were dressed in designer mourning, black, impeccable, expensive, and utterly soulless. Victoria was scrolling on her phone, her heels tapping a rhythmic, impatient staccato on the hardwood floor. When I walked in, Shelley glanced at me, her lip curling slightly. "Oh, Hannah. You made it. There's coffee in the kitchen if you want to make yourself useful." I didn't move. I just stared at the floor and mumbled, "I'm okay, thanks." Mr. Sterling entered the room. He didn't look at my parents. He sat behind the massive desk, opened a thick file, and adjusted his glasses. "Thank you all for coming," he said. His voice was dry, devoid of the sympathy my mother was clearly fishing for. Arthur left very specific instructions regarding the distribution of his estate. Jackson leaned forward, the leather of his chair creaking. "We just want to get this settled. It's been a very difficult week." "I'm sure," Sterling said. He began to read. The list of assets was staggering. The Oak Hill property, appraised at $1.2 million, a stock portfolio worth $2 million, and liquid cash reserves, totaling $600,000, $3.8 million. The air in the room changed. It became electric. I saw Victoria stop tapping her foot. I saw Shelley's hand tighten on Jackson's arm. They weren't grieving. They were salivating. "The entire estate," Sterling continued, looking up over his glasses, "is bequeathed to his granddaughter. Hannah. Silence. Absolute, suffocating silence. Then, the explosion. That's a mistake, Jackson said, his voice low and dangerous. My father was senile. He didn't know what he was doing. He was perfectly lucid, Sterling replied calmly. Hannah? Shelley laughed. A high, brittle sound. She turned to look at me, eyes wide with mock pity. Hannah can't manage a checking account, let alone an estate like this. She's fragile. Look at her. She gestured to my oversized sweater, my slumped shoulders. I let my chin tremble. I let my eyes fill with tears. I played the part perfectly. While they judged me, I studied them. In the ER, you learn to spot fake wealth. Jackson's Rolex ticked instead of sweeping a counterfeit. Shelley's keys weren't for her Mercedes, but a generic rental tag. They weren't just greedy. They were broke. The threats. The pressure. It was survival. Designer clothes masking desperation. I played frightened when Jackson demanded guardianship of the estate. I claimed I was just a nurse, panicked over taxes and lawsuits. Sweat slid down his temple as he checked his watch. He needed cash before 5. Shelley offered to help, proposing a trust and allowance. I asked about probate. Sterling explained a shortcut. If my parents swore I was unfit, they could gain emergency control, but only by signing a waiver. Jackson didn't hesitate. He saw rescue, not danger. Shelley and Victoria signed too. Then I straightened. Sterling calmly invoked the will's competence clause. Anyone challenging the heir forfeited their inheritance. Jackson instantly lost his $150,000 bequest. His face drained. That money was already promised to a lender. They accused us of trickery. I met his stare. It wasn't a trick, I said. It was a test. You failed. With 12 minutes left before foreclosure, he begged. I called the police instead. They left in silence. Weeks later, the bank took their house. The cars, clubs, and prestige vanished. I kept Oak Hill. On my first night inside, I found a forgotten photo of myself, small, hopeful, hidden behind a vase. I threw it away. Not for revenge. For the girl who thought she wasn't enough. If you're still waiting for people like that to change, stop. Don't give them the keys to your life. Change the locks instead.